My name is Elle. I'm 35 years old. On the evening of my birthday, I dragged my suitcase up the familiar gravel path to my lake house. A cake box rested in my hands, balanced carefully as I fumbled with the old brass key. It had been a brutal month of business trips, late nights, airports, and client meetings. But finally, I was home. I pictured it as I climbed the steps. Christy's laugh spilling out from the kitchen, Nolan groaning about some job search, the twins, Sunny and Blake, running barefoot across the deck. My family, the closest thing I had. Tonight I would surprise them. 35 candles, one wish. The key slid easily into the lock. I pushed the door open and froze. A woman I'd never seen before walked out of the kitchen carrying a glass of water. Behind her, a man leaned over the couch, reaching for a remote. Toys littered the rug, plastic blocks, stuffed animals, but not the twins' toys, different ones. The air smelled like curry, sharp and foreign, nothing like Christie's endless reheated casseroles. They all stopped and stared at me. "Can we help you?" the man asked carefully. This is my house," I stammered. "Who are you?" The woman frowned, confused. "We rent this place. We've been here since last month. The lease is signed. Who are you?" The cake tilted in my hands. Rent? Lease? Before I could form words, my phone buzzed. Christy. I answered with shaking fingers. "Christy, what the hell is going on? Who are these people in my living room?" Her voice came fast, high, defensive. "Oh my God, Elle. Why would you just show up like that? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for me? You can't just walk in without calling. You made me look insane in front of the tenants." "The tenants?" My throat burned. "You mean the strangers living in my house?" "My house, Christy." "Don't do this," she hissed. "Don't make a scene. Nolan and I had no choice. The twins' school is in the city. You know that. You're the one paying for it. Living at the lake was impossible. We found a place closer in, so we rented the cottage. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" My voice cracked. "You sublet my home behind my back and you didn't think I'd find out." "You were gone for weeks," she shot back. "Always traveling, always working. What were we supposed to do, Elle? Just wait around while you play the hero?" "This is what's best for my family. You should understand." Her family. As if I weren't the one who kept her family afloat, paying for school, food, utilities, clothes, as if this lake house hadn't been mine before she ever set foot in it. I looked around at the strangers standing frozen in my living room. At the cake trembling in my hands, candles pressed into chocolate that would never be lit. And I realized, on my 35th birthday, that I hadn't walked into a surprise party. I had walked into my own erasure. In that moment, something inside me hardened. I had carried Christy my entire life, through childhood, through grief, through her mistakes, through her children. But I wasn't going to carry her betrayal, not anymore. That was the day I decided. I would never again let my sister treat me like a safety net. Before I tell you what I did next, let me ask you, what would you have done standing there with a birthday cake in your hands, realizing your own sister had stolen your home? Would you forgive her, or would you finally decide you've had enough? I've always been the kind of person who believed the world could collapse at any moment if I didn't hold it together. Maybe that sounds dramatic, but when you grow up in a broken home, you learn fast that stability is never guaranteed. My father was gone before Christy ever formed her first word. I was 7 when he left, old enough to remember the sound of his shoes walking out the door, the slam that rattled the picture frames, the way our mother sat at the kitchen table for hours afterward without moving. Christy, an infant bundled in a faded yellow blanket, never knew him at all. For her, he was just a name on a birth certificate. For me, he was a ghost that haunted our childhood, proof that men could promise forever, and mean only until tomorrow. From then on, it was just the three of us, Mom, me, and Christy. But with Mom working 2 jobs, much of the real parenting fell to me. I grew up fast. While other girls were learning how to braid friendship bracelets, I was braiding my sister's hair before kindergarten. While my classmates argued about whose turn it was to play with dolls, I was teaching Christy how to hold a crayon or tie her shoes. She used to trail after me everywhere, her little legs pumping, calling, Elle, wait for me. She'd fall, scrape her knee, and I'd scoop her up and whisper, It's okay, I've got you. That became my mantra, my role in her life, the one who had her. Our mother adored us, but exhaustion carved lines into her face long before it should have. I can still picture her falling asleep at the kitchen table with a half-written check beneath her hand. Bills, always bills. I would tuck Christy into bed, then quietly wash the dishes so Mom could rest a little longer. I wanted to be more than a sister. I wanted to be the anchor in a house that felt like it was always drifting. By the time I was a teenager, responsibility wasn't just part of me, it was me. I stocked shelves at the grocery store after school, not for spending money, but for groceries at home. I studied late into the night because I knew good grades might someday buy us all a different future. My friends talked about prom dresses and summer camps. I thought about rent, tuition, and whether Christy had enough notebooks for the start of the school year. When I graduated, college seemed like a luxury, but I forced it into reality. I earned scholarships, took out loans, and chose a business program at a school close to home so I could still look after Christy. While my classmates partied, I babysat her, checked her homework, and made sure she ate something more than Pop-Tarts. I was 19, juggling coursework, part-time jobs, and motherhood by proxy. It wasn't glamorous, but it was survival. The years blurred, marked by deadlines and responsibilities. Then, when I was 25, life dealt us another blow. Our mother died suddenly, a heart attack in her sleep. I can still feel the way the hospital hallway smelled of antiseptic and silence, how Christy's hand clutched mine as if I could keep her from crumbling. That night, something final shifted inside me. I had always been her sister, but now I was her only family, so I worked harder. I clawed my way up in the trading company where I started as an intern. At first, I fetched coffee, filed papers, stayed invisible, but I was determined. I volunteered for projects others didn't want, stayed later than anyone else, memorized every detail about markets and logistics until I could speak about them like second nature. By 28, I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was a partner. On paper, it looked like I had won. But victories sometimes come with hidden costs. That same year, my health collapsed. The word cancer entered my life like a curse, flattening everything I had built. The doctors were blunt. Cervical cancer, aggressive, advanced. Treatment was urgent. Surgery was necessary. And with it came the price, a hysterectomy. The quiet, clinical way they told me I would never carry a child felt like someone had burned a hole straight through me. I survived the surgery. I survived the chemo. But the aftermath was worse than I expected. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if life was punishing me for daring to want more. I had sacrificed everything, childhood, youth, freedom, and still I was being stripped of the one dream I had kept quietly tucked away. A family of my own. Christy was 21 then, just finishing college. She tried to comfort me, but she couldn't possibly understand. She was still at the beginning of her story, while I felt like mine had ended before it had even begun. And yet, even in those darkest months, I kept supporting her. I paid her tuition, sent her grocery money, reminded her to keep going when I could barely get out of bed myself. And then, a phone call that changed everything. Christy was pregnant. At first, I felt a sharp sting in my chest. Not resentment exactly, but grief at what I had lost. Still, when she told me she was scared, that Nolan didn't have a stable job, that she didn't know if she was ready, something inside me shifted. I could never carry children, but through her, I could love them. When the twins were born, it was as if the universe had given me a second chance. Sunny and Blake, tiny, wrinkled, perfect. I held them in the hospital room, breathing in that newborn scent, and felt a kind of healing I hadn't thought possible. They became my joy, my reason, the light that softened the shadow of my scars. Every milestone was ours to share. Their first words, their first steps, their first birthdays with frosting smeared across their faces. I bought clothes, strollers, toys. I paid for preschool. and later for the private school Christy insisted on but couldn't afford. I didn't resent it. I wanted them to have the best, to grow up never knowing the instability Christy and I had faced. At the same time, I rebuilt myself. I returned to work, threw myself into deals and negotiations, and rose even higher in the company. I was successful, admired, financially stable. But all of that meant little compared to the look in the twins' eyes when they called me Aunt Elle. And yet, something darker grew beneath the surface. Because with every bill I paid, every emergency I covered, every favor I gave, Christy's gratitude thinned. At first she said thank you, then she stopped saying it at all. My sacrifices became invisible. My help expected. She didn't notice when I skipped vacations to pay her rent. She didn't notice when I declined dinners so I could cover tuition on time. She didn't notice how often I put her family before myself. For her, my devotion became the air she breathed, constant, unnoticed, unappreciated. Looking back now, I see the pattern clearly. It began with shoelaces and hair braids, continued with tuition checks and grocery bills, and culminated with strangers in my lake house on the night of my birthday. That night was not sudden betrayal. It was the inevitable result of years of giving without limits. And as much as it hurt, part of me knew it was time to stop being her savior. Time to stop letting her treat me as the safety net she could tear holes into without ever worrying if I'd mend them. The story of our lives had been written in my sacrifices, but from that birthday onward, I vowed the ending would be written in my strength. After the hospital, our family portrait finally felt complete. Not because my father returned, he never did, but because Christy's twins, Sonny and Blake, had arrived. Two tiny pieces of life that changed everything. Christy poured herself into motherhood the way some people pour themselves into religion. Feedings at dawn, sleepless nights, colic and coughs, lullabies hummed in a cracked whisper. She lived and breathed those children. She claimed she had discovered a strength inside herself she never knew she had. And for once, I believed her. Nolan back then was still the charming, well-meaning man who promised the world and delivered a smile. He cracked jokes in the delivery room, swore he'd take care of everything, and assured me he'd find work soon. But promises are light things. They float if you don't anchor them with action. His bad luck started almost immediately. Layoffs, toxic bosses, shifts that just weren't sustainable. Somehow nothing stuck. Still, I looked the other way. The joy of the twins outweighed my doubts. I wanted Christy to have the family she dreamed of, even if the foundation already looked shaky. When the twins turned 3, the cracks widened. Their apartment was bursting at the seams. 2 cribs jammed into one room, plastic toys blocking the hallway, every surface cluttered. Bills stacked higher than their rent, while Nolan's job hunt remained little more than conversations over beers with friends. They were on the verge of drowning. That's when I made the offer. The lake house wasn't a mansion. It was a modest cottage I'd bought years earlier as a promise to myself. A retreat. A place to breathe after losing so much. Sunlight poured through its wooden frames, the air carried the scent of pine, and the path to the water was lined with stones I'd picked out myself. 20 minutes from the city, but a world away from everything suffocating. "Move in," I told Christy one evening. "Take the house. It'll give the kids room to run and you can start fresh. I'll cover the bills, the groceries, at least until Nolan finds steady work." She hugged me so tightly it hurt. Nolan scratched his head, muttered something about how generous it was, and promised he'd pay me back. I didn't want repayment. I just wanted stability for the kids. At first it worked. Christy repainted the porch railings, sloppy brush strokes dripping down the steps, but she laughed through it. I stocked their pantry like a prepper, labeled boxes of rice, flour, milk, pasta. We made jokes about them having their own mini-mart. On Sundays, I brought pies and stayed for dinner, the kids tumbling over the rug while Christy and I cleaned up together. Gratitude shimmered between us then, awkward but sincere. But gratitude has a short shelf life. Soon, the requests started, small at first. "Could you cover their preschool fees? It'll help them prepare for school." Of course. They've been recommended for speech therapy. It's not cheap. Of course. The other kids are taking music classes. Sonny feels left out. Of course. Then came the utilities. At first, I suggested splitting them. Then I said, I'll cover this month. You handle next. Next became someday. Someday turned into silence. And so I paid. Gas bills rose because the kids get cold easily. Water bills climbed because baths are part of their bedtime routine. Electricity soared. Night lights, endless laundry, cartoons at all hours. I knew raising kids was expensive, but it wasn't just the numbers on the bills that weighed on me. It was the unspoken shift. My support wasn't a gift anymore. It had become an expectation. Meanwhile, Nolan was perfecting the art of doing almost nothing. He cycled through excuses like they were outfits. A warehouse layoff here, a construction gig that didn't suit him there, a friend's startup that paid nothing but was full of potential. He filled his days with fishing trips and networking in coffee shops. He read books about financial freedom while ignoring actual job listings. Christy defended him. He's trying, Elle. Times are tough. He really did go to that interview. They just weren't hiring. He'll figure it out. I wanted to believe her. But when I dropped by unannounced, I'd find Nolan in the middle of the day brewing espresso from a new expensive machine, waxing philosophical about not selling his soul to corporations. Meanwhile, I was selling my soul one late-night flight at a time to keep the money flowing. The kids, though, were my anchor. I bought them matching sun hats for their preschool trip to the zoo. When Christy begged me to chaperone because Nolan couldn't make it, I canceled a critical meeting with suppliers and rearranged my entire schedule. On the bus ride, Sonny fell asleep on my shoulder, and Blake pressed my hand to his cheek, whispering, "Don't let go." My heart broke open and healed at the same time. When I dropped them off that night, Christy texted, "Thanks, you saved me." Minutes later, another message. "By the way, our insurance went up unexpectedly. Could you send $300? I sent it without asking for it back. But the pattern continued. Shoes, gas, vitamins. The pediatrician insists on fines, fees, repairs, always something. My inbox became less about business and more about bailing out a family that wasn't mine. The tone shifted too. Gratitude faded. Entitlement grew. Requests arrived less as questions, more as directives. Elle, pay the gas bill. Elle, the washing machine broke. Can you cover it? Elle, buy the new car seat. Ours cracked. One evening, I overheard the twins whispering while I tucked them in. Ask Aunt Elle, Sonny said. She gives us everything, Blake replied. Their innocence was sweet, but the words cut. They were learning the same lesson Christy had absorbed long ago. My help wasn't help anymore. It was a guarantee. I tried to set boundaries. I can't always cover everything, I told Christy gently. I need you both to take responsibility, too. She looked down, twisting her shirt hem between her fingers. I know. I'm sorry. It's just a rough patch. Nolan's working on something. Soon things will turn around. But soon never arrived. Nolan spoke of projects in vague terms. Opportunities that required no contracts, no proof, no outcomes. He returned home with new gadgets, claiming they were gifts or discounts. Meanwhile, I saw bills piling up that I had quietly paid. The last straw before the straw was a conversation about moving closer to the city. The school is too far, Christy complained. The kids are exhausted. It's 20 minutes, I argued. Wake up earlier. It's manageable. But she pressed on. It's not fair to them. Everyone else lives in town. We're isolated here. I offered, I'll help with rent if you find something closer. Temporarily. Until Nolan stabilizes. She sighed, torn between gratitude and resentment. You do too much already, Nolan muttered. We'll handle it ourselves. His tone wasn't weary. It was sharp, defensive. Like my help was no longer a gift, but an insult. That was when I realized something. My generosity had become a mirror, reflecting back their failures. Instead of appreciating me, they resented me. Still, I pushed it down. Because the kids deserved more. Because I loved them. Because Christy had always been my responsibility. But deep inside, A spring was coiling tighter. I told myself I'd draw the line next time. The next request, the next demand, the next boundary crossed. What I didn't know was that next time wouldn't come in the form of a request. It would come in the form of strangers standing in my living room, insisting they had more right to my home than I did. That day, I finally understood. Kindness without limits isn't kindness. It's a lease someone else writes for you, and eventually, they stop asking if you'll sign. They just assume you already did. I stepped out onto the porch, pressing my hand against the warm wood of the railing. For the first time in years, I breathed evenly. Behind me, inside my cottage, strangers were murmuring in confusion. Tenants who believed they had a perfectly valid lease. On the counter sat the chocolate cake I'd carried all the way here, its candles still unlit, its frosting slowly softening. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I scrolled through my contacts and pressed the number I only used when trouble arrived, Marla Chen, my real estate attorney. Marla Chen, she answered crisply. Don't tell me you're working today, it's your birthday. Best birthday gift you can give me is speed, I said. Listen carefully. My lake house has been sublet without my consent. There are tenants living here who believe it's all official. I don't want a screaming match. I want control. Draft whatever it takes so that starting now, rent payments go directly into my account, notify the tenants, make it clean, legal, undeniable. Send me scans of the lease, Marla replied without hesitation. All pages. And your deed of ownership. Give me 30 minutes. The tenants, embarrassed but polite, handed me their copy. The landlord was listed as Christy. I snapped photos and sent them to Marla along with my deed, tax records, and insurance documents. Within the hour, Marla emailed back a letter. Notice of assignment of rent. It was short, sharp, and merciless. Effective immediately, all rental payments for the property located at address must be paid directly to the owner of record, L surname at the following account. Any other arrangements are null and void. Failure to comply will constitute a breach of lease. Send it, Marla told me over the phone. Then deliver hard copies. I'll file supporting notices with the utility company and your bank. L, one more thing. Yes? No emotional negotiations. Not with your sister, not with her husband. Every word you say, they'll twist. Stick to documents. Stick to facts. I thanked her and hung up. When I re-entered the cottage, the tenants looked nervous. I spoke calmly. I'm the owner. You'll continue living here under the same terms, but from now on, your rent goes directly to me. You'll receive official paperwork within the day. None of this is your fault. The woman nodded with relief and said quietly, We're sorry you were put in this position. And just like that, I realized these strangers had shown me more respect in 10 minutes than my own sister had in 10 years. That night, everything was finalized. The amended lease, the notification letters, the new rent account at my bank. I even updated the password on the smart thermostat I had once paid for, not because I feared theft of electricity, but because I needed the symbolic closure. Access to my home would no longer be theirs. Then came 2 weeks of silence. No calls from Christy, no texts from Nolan. The tenants, however, were prompt. They emailed once to confirm their payment had gone through, and once to politely ask if they could install a swing in the yard for their daughter. I said yes. For the first time in years, my generosity was met with courtesy. On the day the rent was due, my phone lit up like an alarm. Christy. I answered, and her voice immediately exploded down the line. You stole my income, she shrieked. Do you realize what you've done? You humiliated me in front of the tenants, in front of Nolan. They think we're frauds now? How could you? I gazed out across the lake, its surface smooth as glass. I breathed evenly. I didn't steal anything, I said. I reclaimed what was mine. My house, my authority, the rent that belongs to me, nothing more. We only rented it because we were drowning, she cried. We needed that money to survive. You weren't surviving, I replied. You were surviving on me. I paid your bills. I covered the preschool, the school fees, the doctor visits, the utilities, the excursions. I canceled meetings to chaperone your kids when Nolan couldn't bother to show up. I have done the work of 3 adults so you could do the work of none. Don't call it survival. Call it what it is, dependence. On the other end, I heard the sound of her pacing, something crashing against a wall. You had no right to go behind my back. And you had no right to rent out property you don't own. You forged a contract and signed Nolan's name under landlord. You lied to tenants. You pocketed money that never belonged to you. Do you want to talk about rights, Christy? Let's. Her voice cracked. You're cruel, Elle. You're greedy. I'm exhausted, I cut in. Exhausted from carrying you, from being treated like a bottomless wallet, from having every boundary turned into an accusation. I'm done. For a moment, there was only silence. Then she said, weaker. We have real problems, Elle. Nolan isn't being paid. I can't keep up. The kids, you've had problems for years, I told her flatly. The difference is, you've chosen not to solve them. You've chosen to dump them on me. That ends now. How can you talk like this? I'm your sister. Yes, and those are my nephews. Which is why I'm going to say this clearly. You have a choice. Either you and Nolan both get real jobs, official, steady, documented, or I go to court. I will file for temporary custody of Sonny and Blake, because what you've given them isn't stability. It's chaos disguised as love. Her gasp was sharp, like I'd punched through her chest. You'd take my children? I'd take them out of dysfunction. I'd take them into safety. And I'd win. I have bank records of every transfer I've made for their support. Messages from teachers about unpaid fees. Texts from their therapist about missed sessions. Witnesses who've babysat overnight because you forgot to come home. Photos of Nolan's toys and gadgets bought while I paid the bills. And medical records showing I took them to appointments you skipped. Do you want me to stop, or should I keep going? She sucked in air like she was drowning. You're a monster. No, I said calmly. I'm a woman who has finally stopped being your lifeline. You can swim on your own, or you can sink, but I won't drown with you. You don't have the right. I do, as their aunt, as their de facto guardian, as the person who has kept them clothed and fed while you and Nolan spiraled, and as the legal owner of the house you exploited. I let the silence stretch until it burned. You have 1 week, I continued. Update your resume. Apply for 10 jobs a day. Meet with the career coach I'll pay for once. Draft a 3-month budget showing what you will cover yourselves. Show me proof. If you don't, next call I make will be to the court clerk. Her voice faltered. I don't even have childcare. Who will watch the kids while I interview? Their father, I said coldly. Tell Nolan to close his laptop and stop watching get-rich-quick videos long enough to be a parent. He can't handle them. Then you can't handle them together. And the court will see that too. The line went quiet. In the distance, I heard the click of a light switch inside the tenant's home, the glow of a lamp turning on against the twilight. I hate you, Christy whispered. You've always thought you were better than me, always the perfect one. No, I was the one holding up the air so you could breathe, and now I'm taking the air back. Her breath hitched, half sob, half growl. What do I tell the kids? Tell them the truth. Tell them Aunt Elle loves them. Tell them grown-ups sometimes make bad choices, and tell them grown-ups can also fix things, if they try. Then she broke. Ugly, loud, childlike sobs that had less to do with grief than with rage. I listened for a minute, then said quietly, 1 week, Christy. Don't call me to scream. Call me when you're ready to take responsibility. I hung up. The lake was still outside my window, mist rising like a curtain. My phone buzzed again. A notification from the bank. Deposit received. September rent. For the first time, the money had gone where it was always meant to. That night, I wrote a list. What I will no longer do. I will no longer pay just this once. I will no longer cancel meetings for their crises. I will no longer be guilt-tripped into carrying their failures as if they were mine. In the morning, I called Marla again. Prepare a custody petition, I told her. Not because I want to file it, but because I need to be ready. Good, she said. And Elle? I'm proud of you. This isn't revenge, it's reclamation. She was right. I wasn't punishing Christy, I was saving myself, and maybe, just maybe, I was saving the twins too. You think the story ended there? No, that was only the beginning of a new chapter. One where Nolan finally stepped out of the shadows and I had to face him head on. The first time I saw Christy in the apron, I didn't recognize her. It was a Tuesday afternoon and the diner smelled like bacon grease and coffee that had sat on the burner too long. I'd stopped in because I knew her schedule, the one she'd texted me the night before with a dozen crying emojis and a single hard promise, I'll show up. She came out of the kitchen with a tray of refills, hair scraped back, the hollows beneath her eyes visible even under the fluorescence. She caught sight of me, hesitated, then placed a cup in front of a man with a newspaper and said, too brightly, "Can I get you anything else?" After her section cleared, she slid into the booth opposite me and pushed away a salt shaker someone had left open. "It's humiliating," she said, "but I'm doing it." "It's work," I replied. "Humility isn't humiliation. They're different." She stared at the menu as if it could tell her a kinder version of her life. "My feet hurt. The manager hates me. I messed up 3 orders yesterday and a table laughed." I wanted to crawl into the freezer. "The freezer doesn't solve heating bills," I said. "This does." She huffed a laugh that wasn't a laugh. "You're impossible." "Or I'm unimaginative," I said. "I believe in the boring solution. Show up. Keep showing up." For a week she did. She took every shift they offered, came home smelling like onions and steam, and texted me photos of pay stubs as if they were proof of existence. I didn't clap. I didn't praise. I sent a thumbs up and an emoji of a brick, then another, build a wall, one piece at a time. Nolan did nothing. At first, he pretended to be offended by the idea of hourly labor. "I'm not made for food service," he told Christy, as if the world were a bespoke suit and he needed it tailored to his dreams. Then he made noises about interviews, potential partners, a friend's brand. Days went by. Then a week. As far as I could tell, the only thing he lifted with consistency was his phone. The twins didn't ask questions. They were 5. The age where reality is whatever the adults rehearse with enough conviction. They came to stay with me on the nights Christy worked the late shift, and after the 3rd night, I made a decision that felt like a promise to my former self. I hired a nanny. Her name was Rosa, a grandmother with hands like weathered fruit and a laugh that sounded like rain. She arrived with a canvas bag filled with crayons and patience, and an instinct for the quiet chaos of children. I gave her a key, a list of rules, and what I had never given anyone before, permission to share the load. "You don't have to do this," Christy said when I told her. "I don't have to not do it either," I replied. "Rosa is for me as much as for them. I want to be their aunt, not their infrastructure." She bit her lip. "I hate that word." "Me too," I said. That's why we're retiring it. The house in the city, my apartment with its 3 rooms and a balcony that caught the afternoon sun, became a different animal with Sonny and Blake living part-time under its ribs. It grew a chore chart and a shoe basket. It learned the geometry of bunk beds and glass cups with lids. We built a small world the way you build a raft. Sturdy, layered, light enough to float. The first night the twins stayed over while Christy worked 2 shifts back-to-back, we ate spaghetti with too much Parmesan, and then we drew a map. "Of where?" Sonny asked. "Of our new island," I said. "It has a fort and a library and a bakery. The bridge is made of questions. You can only cross if you ask 3 good ones." Blake narrowed his eyes. "What counts as good?" "There you go," I said. "That's one." They laughed until the kitchen light looked like a moon. Later, after Rosa tucked them in and the apartment fell into the soft hush of sleeping children, I sat on the balcony and stared at the streetlights. Somewhere across town, Christy poured coffee for the 15th time that hour. Somewhere closer, Nolan scrolled. The next morning, he finally called. "Put them on," he said without hello. "I want to talk to my sons." "They're asleep, Nolan. It's 7. They'll call you later." He exhaled hard, a performance of disgust. "This is ridiculous. You've turned my family against me." "I've turned on the light," I said. "If you don't like what you see, close your eyes." "Cute," he snapped. You think you're a hero. You're not. You're a rich bully with a martyr complex. I'm not a hero, I said. I'm a woman who knows the difference between love and indebtedness. Do you? He hung up. In the days that followed, Christy kept working. She learned to move through the diner like a current, table to counter, counter to kitchen, kitchen to register. She burned her wrist on the edge of a griddle and didn't cry. She memorized 3 regulars' orders. She sent me a photo of her feet in cheap sneakers with the caption, "Still standing." But every night she returned to Nolan. To the couch, the screen, the empty promises that had once sounded like music. She defended him with the soft stubbornness of someone who can't admit they bet their life on the wrong horse. He's looking, she told me. He's just lost. Lost people ask for directions, I said. They don't fire the compass. One evening, after her shift, she came to pick up the boys. Rosa had already bathed them, and the apartment smelled like apple shampoo and crayons. I poured tea. She stood by the window and stared out at the world as if it might offer a pardon. I know what you want me to do, she said. I know what you don't want me to say, I answered. She blinked. What? I won't say, leave him on a loop, as if that sentence can lift the weight for you. You already know the road out. You've been walking on it, shift after shift, tip after tip. The rest of the way is yours. I love him, she said like a confession. Love isn't a leash, I replied. It's a ladder. If it doesn't help you climb, it's not love, it's a trap. She swallowed, throat working. If I leave him, I'll be admitting I wasted years. You won't be admitting anything I haven't witnessed, I said, not unkindly. Staying isn't an eraser. It's a pause button that never unpauses. She laughed poorly. You always have metaphors. I have scars, I said. They make metaphors easy. That weekend, I took the twins to the lake house to check in on the tenants and to show the boys where ducks nap in the reeds. The tenant's daughter had learned to swing over the grass without dragging her toes. She shouted hello as if we were distant cousins. I changed a light bulb in the hallway and checked the smoke detector batteries. We walked the path to the water and skipped stones. Blake showed Sonny how to pick flat rocks. Sonny pretended to cast a spell on the lake. Make Mom brave. On the drive back, the boys slept, heads tilted toward each other in the rear view like parentheses around a quiet sentence. I drove carefully, as if any sudden movement could spill them. Monday brought a storm that didn't bother with rain. It arrived by phone. Christy, can I come over tonight without the boys? Me. Yes. She showed up in jeans and a sweatshirt, hair damp with the grease that never fully leaves restaurant air. She sat at my kitchen table and ran her finger along a crack in the wood as if she could coax it closed. I told him, she said. He laughed, said I'm not serious, said I wouldn't last a week on my own. You already have, and I said. She looked up, eyes brimming. What if I'm making the boys grow up without a father? Growing up with an example of laziness and contempt isn't better than growing up with fewer birthday candles, I said. Children learn what stability looks like by living inside it. Make them a room with walls. The rest can be decorated later. I'm scared. I am too, I said. Fear isn't a stop sign. It's a speed limit. We talked logistics. I showed her a budget, a timeline, a list of apartments that were walkable from the diner, and a bus stop. We spoke about a custody schedule that didn't break the boys' calendar into an unrecognizable language. I told her I would cover first month's rent and the deposit once, and that after that, her paycheck and the child support Nolan would be legally required to pay would keep the lights on. She nodded, until nodding looked like muscle memory. At midnight, she stood. I need to sleep before I do anything brave, she said. Is that allowed? Of course, and I said, courage doesn't expire at sunrise. She left. I washed 2 cups, turned off the kitchen light, and stood in the doorway of the boys' room. The bunks were empty, blankets smooth. Rosa had left a note on the counter with a doodle of a duck. It felt like living inside a question mark. The next day, I met with Marla and signed a folder thick with potential futures. A petition prepared but not filed, a draft of a child support motion, A letter reminding Nolan that parenting is not a hobby. We didn't talk about revenge, we talked about order. By Wednesday, Christy had packed 2 suitcases and 1 laundry basket. By Thursday, she had moved them back into Nolan's closet. I didn't call. I didn't text. I walked to the park with the boys and let them throw bread at pigeons who didn't deserve carbs. Friday night, the phone rang. Not Christy. A number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice. Is this Elle? My name is Daphne. I work at the diner with your sister. She fainted during the dinner rush. She's okay. Dehydration, we think? But she asked me to call you. Nolan. Didn't answer. I arrived to find Christy sitting on a milk crate in the alley behind the restaurant, pale and furious at her own body. I helped her into the car, brought her home, put electrolyte packets in water like we were kids with the flu. She slept on my couch while I wrote an email to myself titled, "When the line moves again, move it back." Saturday morning, she woke with the apology already in her mouth. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not for fainting. For everything fainting stands in for." "Good," I said. "Now apologize to yourself." She looked at me, weary and wondering. "How?" "By making the decision you've already made," I said. "In reality, not in theory." She had another shift that afternoon. She showered, tied her hair back, kissed the boys, and left. An hour later, my phone buzzed. "Christy." I told him. He threw my suitcase down the stairs. I put the clothes back in. "I'm taking the boys after my shift. Can you help?" Me. "Yes, we'll be here." Rosa and I rearranged the apartment as if it were a stage, and we'd been given the script 10 minutes before curtain. I moved a dresser. Rosa washed an extra set of sheets. We went to the market and bought peaches because sometimes the body needs sugar to believe in sweetness. The boys and I built a fort in the living room out of blankets and chairs. "It's not a fort," Blake said. "It's a lighthouse." He put the battery lantern in the center, "So Mom can find us." At 8:14 p.m., the door opened. Christy stood there with 1 duffel bag and a cardboard box. Her face was blotchy from crying and the weather. Sonny held her hand tight enough to turn his knuckles white. Blake dragged a stuffed elephant with a loose ear. "Hey," I said, as if she had just come back from a walk. "You made it." She didn't speak. She set the box down and leaned her forehead against my shoulder, neither hugging nor collapsing, just making contact like an astronaut docking to the only ship in sight. Then she straightened, wiped her face, and said, steady for the first time in months, "Can I borrow your pen?" She wrote 3 lines on the back of an envelope. 1. New apartment by the end of the month. 2. Lawyer Monday. 3. Never go back. She stuck the envelope to my fridge with a magnet shaped like a tomato. After the boys fell asleep in the lighthouse, we sat at the kitchen table. Outside, the city breathed in and out. The clock on my microwave ticked toward a future that still refused to show its face. "What if I fail?" she asked. "You will," I said. "Small failures, buses missed, bills late, shoes forgotten at school. You'll fail, and then you'll keep going. That's what good parents do." She laughed into her hands. "You're brutal." "I'm honest," I said. "For once, so are you." We made a plan for Sunday. Daycare forms, a visit to one of the apartments on my list, a trip to the diner to return her uniform, and pick up her last paycheck if she decided to switch to a daytime job across town with better hours. I showed her the contingency fund I'd created in my budget, not hers. 2 months of in case, not a lifetime of always. She nodded like the floor had stopped moving. Midnight came and went. Christy fell asleep on the couch again. I covered her with a blanket and sat beside the bunk beds, listening to the twins breathe. Their sleep was the kind of pure that has nothing to do with goodness and everything to do with security. In the morning, I made pancakes. Blake declared them circles of happiness. Sonny asked if he could make one shaped like a heart. The heart looked like Idaho but tasted right. Christy woke slowly like a person surfacing from deep water. She sat at the table and ate in silence, then looked at the tomato magnet and nodded to herself once. "Okay," she said. "Okay." That afternoon, she took the boys to the park down the block and called the apartment manager from a bench. Rosa folded laundry. I opened my laptop and emailed Marla. Update, trajectory changing. Keep the files warm. We may not need them. We might. I prefer not to. When evening came, Christy didn't go back to Nolan's. She called him and said, gently, simply, "It's over," he shouted. He threatened, he wept, he promised to change. She listened like a person watching a familiar movie, one she could quote by heart. Then she hung up and blocked his number. The twins did not ask where their father was. They asked if the lighthouse could stay up for one more night. I said yes. And so we waited. Not like people waiting for rescue, but like builders waiting for cement to set. We did the small things. Lunches packed, shoes lined by the door, a grocery list pinned under the tomato, a bedtime story about a family that found the edge of a map and decided to draw more land. I don't know how the court will view Nolan. I don't know whether Christy will stumble and call him, or whether he will suddenly discover a version of himself that knows how to show up. Life is not a straight line. It's a shoreline, beautiful, jagged, always redrawn by storms. What I do know is this. I will not let Sonny and Blake grow up believing that love is a room where one adult sleeps while the other sweeps. I will not let them learn that a girl's job is to become the rope that pulls a man across his own life. I will not let them believe that kindness is a contract you sign in blood. Tonight, I sit on the floor of my living room while the boys build another lighthouse out of couch cushions and blankets. Christy is on the balcony, holding a mug of tea like an oath. The city has turned the sky the color of bruised peaches. Somewhere out there, a man is realizing that the bridge he never built will not appear under his feet. "Does the lighthouse ever go out?" Sonny asks, placing the lantern just so. "Sometimes," I say, "when no one tends it." Blake looks up, solemn. "We'll take turns." "Good," I say. "That's how families work." We'll see what tomorrow asks of us. Maybe it will demand phone calls and forms. Maybe it will require a new mattress or a locksmith or a quiet conversation with a school counselor. Maybe it will be easy. I don't count on easy anymore. I count on steady. For now, I watch the twins' faces glow under the lighthouse's plastic moon and think about all the things I have lost and all the things I have finally refused to lose. My body never made children, but my life learned to mother. Not by bleeding for everyone, but by building, boundary by boundary, the kind of world where small boys can sleep and a woman can say, "Enough," and mean it. Christy comes inside and sits beside me. She takes my hand, not for rescue, but for company. The fort breathes, the city hums, the lake is far away, and also right here, a dark, steady thing in my chest. We are waiting, not for permission, not for forgiveness, not for a miracle. We are waiting for a decision to become a life. And while we wait, we play with two little boys who deserve a story in which the women do not drown,